Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar organized by Manufacturing Today and in partnership with ServiceNow, Digital Factory Transformation in Manufacturing, Strategies for Success. I am Sujata Vishnuraj, editor with Manufacturing Today. On behalf of Manufacturing Today and ServiceNow, I thank you all for taking time out to attend this webinar. In the ever-evolving landscape of manufacturing, the concept of digital factory has emerged as a game changer, revolutionizing the way we design, produce, and deliver goods. In this webinar, we will delve into the dynamic landscape of manufacturing, exploring innovative strategies to harness the power of digital transformation for enhanced efficiency, agility, and competitiveness in the modern era. The manufacturing industry stands at a pivotal crossroad where advanced technologies, automation, and data-driven processes have become indispensable ingredients for survival and growth. The digital factory, powered by cutting-edge technologies such as AI, IoT, cloud computing, and robotics, has the potential to unlock new frontiers of productivity, efficiency, and innovation. In collaboration with ServiceNow, a global leader in digital transformation solutions and manufacturing today, an authoritative voice in manufacturing sector, this webinar aims to empower you with insights and knowledge necessary to make informed decisions and embark on a successful digital factory transformation journey. Allow me to introduce our esteemed speaker for the session, Ashish Pujari. Ashish leads manufacturing GTM for ServiceNow across Asia Pacific and Japan region. He has spent over 3 decades in the supply chain and manufacturing industry as a practitioner, consultant, sales leader, and business leader across leading consulting and supply chain companies. He has deep domain expertise in distribution, in intensive industries like consumer goods, retail, as well as asset-intensive industries like automotive, heavy engineering, chemicals, and oil and gas. Ash has also spent a lot of time helping companies drive automation through Industry 4.0 initiatives around intelligence, automation, and creating new businesses. Ash was personally involved in transformation work at companies like BMW, GlaxoSmithKline, Nestle, Petronas, Tata Steel, Cipla, Dabur, DHL, Kawasaki Group, Hyundai Kia Motor Company, etc. Ash is a trained leader in Six Sigma and lean manufacturing. Ash has held leadership positions in world-class companies like SAP, JDA, Capgemini, etc. He has also been a founder of 2 successful startups in the supply chain space, a regular speaker and an evangelist and a coach in the space of manufacturing and supply chain innovation. Ash works with universities and government agencies to enable transformation for Industry 4.0 and sustainability at scale. Allow me to invite Ash to take us on the exciting journey of exploration, innovation, and transformation to uncover the strategies for achieving success in the digital factory transformation within the manufacturing industry. Thank you once again for joining us, and I hope you find this webinar to be an enlightening and enriching experience. Over to you, Ash.
Thank you, Sujata. Thanks for the wonderful introduction. And good afternoon, good evening to all, wherever you are dialed in from. As Sujata mentioned, my name is Ash, and I run the manufacturing GTM for the APAC and Japan region for ServiceNow. It's a pleasure and honor to spend time with you professionals on a topic that's getting more and more relevant these days, shop floor digitization. Over the next 30-odd minutes, let me share my point of view on how manufacturers are grappling with this race against time for successful digitization of the factory floor. I will particularly focus on asset uptime because, again, asset uptime is a key ingredient that goes into making sure that there is the final production floor, which is measuring up to their parameters. When I do a double click on the topic of asset uptime, it will be about asset security and maintenance. So I'm sure you're kind of getting the drift as to where I'm going with this. Bear with me and let's go through the session. I've kept the agenda simple, what I'm going to cover today. I'll start with some macro view on trends and then dive into my favorite topic of IT-OT convergence. And again, this stems from that earlier statement that I made that I will move towards the whole asset uptime part of it, and IT/OT convergence is an integral part of that, something that establishes the foundation of a data-driven enterprise. I'll finish with some key strategies to address the problem and finally spend time to talk through a couple of interesting cases. All right, busy slide in front of you. I found this slide from the World Economic Forum rather interesting and decided to start setting the context using this. So let's start with the text on the bottom, right? Where this automation clearly has the vision to move from product to service to outcome to completely on demand or pull. So when I talk to CXOs, and I have the privilege to talking to a whole lot of CXOs in this region, some of the large company CXOs in APAC and Japan have clearly exemplified what is depicted here. In the immediate term, the focus is how to improve operational efficiencies, how to squeeze more, how to improve quality, how to reduce costs, how to improve predictability. And when you move to a little bit to the right, the art of the possible slowly kicks in. How to offer product as a service to the customer, how to commercialize pay-per-use, how to look at monetization of the data that's collected as part of the core processes, et cetera, et cetera. But the same CXOs are constantly looking at ways and means to stay ahead of the game against their competitors by connecting to the ecosystem and establishing a digital industry. And this is where consumers like you and me start to pay for the service on an outcome basis. And finally, the nirvana of this roadmap of excellence, creating an offering that satisfies the craving of a demand-driven enterprise, something that we all have been dreaming about, right? The demands of an end-to-end automation beyond the four walls of this, with a single intelligent platform, orchestrating and responding to the dynamic customer demands, balancing the basic principles. And there are only two basic principles in business, right? Which is cost and customer service. And if you balance that well, you can, and the rest of the stuff kind of kept in place in terms of innovation, you have achieved that final level of nirvana that I just talked about. So let's talk about challenges in manufacturing. What's ailing manufacturing? So we recently from ServiceNow, we conducted a survey of the top manufacturing companies globally. And we had a very sizable chunk of the survey respondents from our neck of the woods, from Asia Pac, and just reconfirmed our hypothesis on why is it so tough for manufacturers to be data-driven enterprise. I hate reading slides, but so we'll do a quick summary. Manufacturers today are caught in the conundrum of managing a mix of old and new machinery for production. And anyone in manufacturing will attest to that. They haven't figured out a way to connect seamlessly to the entire ecosystem of, say, suppliers, partners, customers, and sometimes in their own departments or, within the organization, multiple plants, for instance, multiple logistics operations, for instance, and thus suffer from a lack of end-to-end visibility and insights. I'm sure a lot of you are driving, for instance, ESG initiatives, reporting on carbon. In order to get the 15 categories of, say, Scope 3 emission reporting and control, traditional systems and applications will struggle to gather data. And this was, the ESG part of it is just an example, and that's a new thing, right? I've seen a similar argument coming out of sales and operations planning, for instance. Similarly, the holy grail of efficient manufacturing is measurement and improvement of OEE, overall equipment efficiency. People from manufacturing on this call will, and who are on the shop floor, who own production, they know that OEE measurement can be simple, but to move the needle on that with an environment where different systems and applications exist in solo is going to be tough. Let me see if I've covered everything. Yes, I have. So in this journey of Industry 4.0 transformation, what's happening? What's happening here is there's a maniacal focus on hyperconnectivity. Wireless is able to extend the connectivity and collaboration. Machines are connected now to automate. Data-driven processes are replacing manual work. And savor the term, everything is now operated over a cloud-based infrastructure. You would ask, so what? Hold on your horses. I'm inching towards my favorite topic of maintaining asset uptime. All right, why is this topic hot? Let's build on what I discussed in the previous slide. In recent times, manufacturers have become much more vulnerable to cyber attacks, right? And you could relate that to my earlier slide as well, the why part of it, right? There has been an explosion of intelligent devices and systems communicating with each other over the internet. The growing interconnection between OT systems and enterprise IT networks exposes OT systems to potential attacks from the internet, increasing the attack surface. If proper security measures are not in place, the OT devices are unsecured, cyber criminals can exploit these connections to gain unauthorized access, disrupt operations, or steal sensitive data. These give cyber criminals more attack chains to gain access to secure networks. And the consequences of that can be humongous. A single ransomware attack can take a factory down for a whole week or more, leading to significant financial impact through lost revenue and financial penalties. Also, cyber attacks can lead to environmental disasters, like the release of hazardous material, which could even result in loss of life. And again, the organization can be liable in a much bigger way. Safeguarding your operational technology, therefore, must be a top priority. I hope you are with me on this. And let me just show you some stats. And this all came through this survey that we have done together with a third-party company. I am not putting up this slide to scare anybody, but clearly this topic can no longer be ignored. I will not read out all the stats here, but let me pick on some. You need to take the data, of course, data being data, in the right context. It's slightly dated, if you notice, right? But honestly, my belief is, if this was the situation in 2021 or a few years ago, it has to be much worse now, because the number of devices have exploded, the number of connectivities, the access to the internet of these smart machines is much more in comparison to what it used to be in 2021. So to just summarize it, in 2021, around 90% of manufacturers had their production or energy supply hit by some form of cyber attack. There were 64 cyber attacks publicly reported in 2021, and which was 140% more than 2020. Huge. Approximately 35% of these resulted in physical consequences, with estimated damages of about 140 million per incident, US dollars. And a research company, ITIC, who we work closely with, says that factory downtime can cost smaller firms around 300,000 US dollars per hour. So just think about it. And as much as $1 million US dollars per hour for larger manufacturers. Personally, I was engaged with a Japanese automotive manufacturer who had an attack. And the effect of that in terms of customer service or customer churn and the real cost of sales is still something that's there in the books, and one can do a double click on that at some point in time. So it brings me to this topic of IT-OT convergence, which is a natural shift of focus. When one opens up on the left, what you see is the Purdue model, which is the model that kind of gives you a visibility of where these different systems stack up. where the IT systems are on the top and the OT systems are below. And there is a zone, which is a DMZ, that's somewhere in between. When one opens up the Purdue model, the realization is stark. The idea of edge computing, basically picking up data from IoT devices and smart sensors, normalizing it based on the need of the use case and populating a data lake is something that's a norm, right? So it sounds very logical. And what happens is when you lift the covers, the air gaps are very clear. When I use the word air gaps in a loose way, these are areas where the hacking could happen, where the cyber criminals could kind of get in. Similarly, for service orchestration, device, system, and endpoint visibility, health status, location, configuration, and operational data comes into play, and thus creates that vulnerability that I'm talking about. The focus that's something that used to exist in the IT world now tries to grapple with the business rules and events that are super complex when it comes to manufacturing, right? So the summary of this slide is, there was this IT world that always was matured in terms of looking at a cyber attack and how to deal with it. The OT world, or the manufacturing world, the manufacturing asset world, is new to this and is learning the same ropes of making sure that they understand before the attack what's going to happen. They have a complete visibility of the landscape of their assets, and they know what to do when the actual attack happens. So the digital twin that's created is something that needs to address the issue before and after. I'll spend some time on OT management, and that's something that I feel is a very key piece of the puzzle when it comes to digital transformation on the factory floor or Industry 4.0. Let me wrap this section with a very straightforward slide. So this is the final slide that talks about the solutions and how we address the problem. It's a very straightforward slide that talks through a foolproof way to secure the shop floor. I would label this as a 4-step framework. Let's start with creating a foundation that lays down the rules for ingestion of data based on what we discussed earlier, the Purdue model visibility, incorporating the unique rules based on the business process. Yeah. Carefully classifying the critical infrastructure levels. It also determines how to get in data from systems that are constantly monitoring cyber attacks, both through active and passive sniffing. The second step in my mind is extremely important, though sounding extremely basic. It's about mapping out the entire OT estate, the operational technology estate, and creation of a digital twin. Isn't that the first step towards a data-driven enterprise? Because once you have the digital twin in place, you have the data in place, you have the OEM information in place, you have the version information in place. So you actually have a complete status of that particular asset. I'm a consultant by training and an engineer by education. Unless I, for instance, have the baselining of anything done properly, I struggle to create any visionary plans. And that's the basic mantra I follow. It's as simple as me trying to lose weight. Yeah. If I need to stand up on weighing scale to understand what's my weight, and then mapping the rules in my head to source for the data in terms of my diet, sleep, workout, stress levels, etc., right? Very, very similar. It is really basic. Then the third step, very logical in the step of creating a response to attacks, but analyzing via a centralized dashboard, like a control tower. Yeah. And finally, acting upon it through an intelligent workflow of service management. So these are the fundamentals. When we were talking about what strategies are needed we do not need to boil the ocean. We need to keep it simple. We need to put a stake in the ground. We need to make sure that the rules are incorporated, and we need to figure out a way that there is a service aspect to it that addresses the problem. Okay, so that kind of breezes through the why and the how, right? And to talk through the IT/OT convergence, I picked up a couple of case studies that should resonate with most of us. So let me start with something called Dreamworld, because what I did was I deliberately did not pick up a heavy-duty manufacturing case, even though that my expectation is in the audience there are mostly manufacturing folks. I decided not to do that. Since every sub-industry within the manufacturing world is different, and everyone might not be able to relate to this. So this is Dreamworld, a theme park. And if any of us, whether single or with family, we either have been to one or aspire to be visiting a theme park, right? And that's the reason I thought everyone should be able to relate to this. It's a case, use case here is monitoring the cold storage performance, the temperature, the moisture, etc., mainly for health and safety purposes. Dreamworld, the theme park, uses connected operations to remotely monitor their cold storage, massively reducing risk to the business, reducing manual and time-consuming processes, and lowering costs. Did not want to, again, read through the slide. The slide is in front of you. But think about it. The liability of a theme park in terms of safety is phenomenal. So, you look at theme parks where the checks go on their rides. They have inspectors who go around looking at every single fun element that exists there to make sure that everyone is protected. And that should happen to the F&B side as well. And this is what we do with Dreamworld. Let's take on another one. Again, keeping the whole topic slightly more generic and not just focusing on manufacturing so that everyone can relate to this. It's TAPCO, a company that manages infrastructure for traffic control. They manufacture the control systems for traffic management infrastructure, and in some cases, offer the traffic management as a service to the city authorities, sort of a one-stop shop. In case of TAPCO, the use case is of connected operations to monitor wrong-way traffic systems remotely, reducing asset downtime, improving the experience of their customers, and getting near real-time visibility into equipment status. TAPCO also uses the product to turn their product or traffic signals into a service, and selling the use of traffic signals to Department of Transportation across the US. Now, try to relate to this, right? I mean, there are companies in this world who are who aspire to move from selling a product to selling a service. My personal experience has been with a very large tire manufacturer who decided to move from selling tires to selling tire as a service, and made sure that the whole ecosystem that goes around that, truckers, drivers, all of that, is part of a data chain wherein they pick up data right from the tires to make sure that the tires are in good condition, and replenish or fix those tires if there is any damage to it, to ensure that the trucks or the moving vehicles are in perfect condition. All right, so that brings me to the end of my session. We will be able to send out the material I have shared electronically to anyone who wants it. Please do send out a request to the event organizers. This slide, the resources slide, also points you to some of the white papers and material on ServiceNow point of view on the digital factory. Thanks for your patient listening. I'll hand it back to ITP.
What is the pace, achievements, and impact of digital transformation in manufacturing industry as on today? And what is asset uptime and what is its influence on digital transformation?
Excellent question. Two parts, right? So the first part is about what am I seeing in the market? The pace of adoption of a digital transformation at the shop floor level varies from sub-industry to sub-industry, and it also varies from geography to geography. So I'll give you some examples. Let's take India, because I think bulk of the listeners are from the India region. We have seen tremendous uptake of transformation discussions, POCs, large-scale implementations at automotive and not just the OEM, but the parts manufacturers. So that's one segment that we are seeing a lot of traction. And the second one is in the heavy industry space, where, and heavy industry is a slightly a loose term. Here we are talking about steel manufacturers, we are talking about cement manufacturers, we are talking about machinery folks. These are the two segments in India that we are seeing a lot of traction, and they have moved away from just doing POCs of looking at how do you bring in IoT data into a data lake and make sense, to looking at how do we orchestrate across the entire enterprise and beyond, how to respond, how to communicate, and how to intelligently, proactively manage assets and orders and the entire chain, the demand per se. So these are the two industries that I'm seeing. Elsewhere in this region, there are chemical industries that are looking at a subset of Industry 4.0. They are, again, they are asset intensive, and they are looking at how do I make my assets more intelligent to ensure that there is minimal downtime of that asset. Now, coming to the second part of the question, what do I mean by asset uptime, right? Asset uptime is about keeping the asset going on, right? So I'm just trying to see how do I make it, clear in a layman's language. So a manufacturing floor consists of multiple assets. Every single line that you see on the manufacturing floor is built around multiple assets that contribute to the production levels of that particular line. I did allude to a term called OEE, the overall equipment effectiveness. This is a measure of the uptime of that particular asset and the quality it spits out, right? So an OEE of an asset is sacrosanct in terms of measuring the efficiency of the shop floor. And when I say asset uptime, I'm actually alluding to moving the needle on the OEE side. Okay. I hope that answered your question.
Okay, that was a very elaborate one. So the second question is, what needs to be done by government and the industry to enhance the ecosystem? And how about the level of cybersecurity level we have? Do we have the capability to reduce the vulnerability in India?
I think the capability, definitely. So again, two parts of this question, right? What should the government do? And do we have the capability? I think that in this particular case, when we are talking about a manufacturing, let's just understand this, that there is this manufacturing shop floor or a manufacturing enterprise that deals with suppliers, customers, logistics partners, their own departments, and other parts of the ecosystem, right? The part that is in their control is to map out their entire process, all the assets, and create a digital directory of their estate. So that is part of their control. Now, based on that, they would understand areas that are vulnerable, okay? So they would understand where the air gaps exist, and I used the term earlier, where the air gaps exist, so that they know where to monitor and how to monitor and which processes to monitor. So what are you doing? So essentially looking at your entire estate, putting a digital view of it, and monitoring the vulnerabilities to ensure that once it's cited, it's brought into an action point, right? So in this particular description that I did, there is a lot that the enterprise can do or its ecosystem can do, and very little that the government can do. The government can basically figure out ways and means to set the law for cybercrime, for instance, or set the law for people getting caught for cybercrime and prosecute them, right? So it's definitely, those are the areas that the government can do. But to be honest, today we don't need extensive standards to bring in the data to make sense out of it and to act upon it. So the responsibility lies on the enterprise.
One question is regarding the data mining. So how do we prevent data mining and sharing classified data with competition by a colleague for a consideration who is separated from the organization? So how do we stop somebody from stealing your data?
Well, I think most organizations have their own standards, and we have within ServiceNow, we have very strict standards in terms of what kind of data access is given to that particular individual. So one of the easiest way is to based on personal profile, the access to that data, and there is a centralized way where people like myself are monitored on sharing that data or usage of the data. Now, is that a foolproof system? I'm not so sure. I'm not a data expert to sit and comment on internal data management. So I would rather that we seek this with people who manage their internal, the CISOs of organizations. How do they manage their internal data?
Okay. So in another question by Sunil David is that in India, we have discrete manufacturers. Have they reached a level of maturity where they can sell products as a service? And since right now, the use of such business models are very limited.
I completely agree with you. If it was widespread, I wouldn't have mentioned it. Yeah. So it is an early stage, but more and more Indian companies are already either talking about it or driving certain POCs to achieve that. Yeah. So there is a battery manufacturer, for instance, who have already started looking at how to implement battery as a service. We have seen a particular gas manufacturer looking at how do you supply gas to industrial gas, gas as a service. So rather than shipping out, cylinders based on demand as an SKU, they are selling it as a service. So is the world mature to do this? Absolutely not. But is the thinking on? Absolutely yes. Is there a mechanism to get there? Only if you can make sure that you are a data-driven enterprise. So you need to have your data in place in order to do things like billing, for instance, looking at insurance, for instance, in certain cases, looking at the customer or the demand side of the story, all of that, and linking it back to the back end of supply, manufacturing, product design, all of that. So yes, there is definitely a move towards it, and everyone is talking about it.
There's a question regarding the awareness of digital transformation. And what is the key criteria for this forest investment in manufacturing industry?
I think there is something, digital transformation itself is slightly loose term, right? So different ways of looking at digital transformation. The simplest way of looking at digital transformation is moving away from manual or paper-based data to real data that can be managed, that can be secured, and the data integrity managed in a much more process-centric way. Yeah. So this is something that's that's the first step. So when we are talking about what are those key criteria, you got to take a look. And I'll give you my example. When I talk to manufacturing companies, I insist on doing a plant visit. Yeah, because the back end is very, very clear that they are all digitized. You will see HR systems, procurement systems, all of that in place in a lot of places. But when you go to the shop floor, you will still see paper floating around. You'll still see a whiteboard with a red, yellow, green stickers on it saying this process is in danger, this is in motion, et cetera, et cetera. So that gives me an indication that at the shop floor level, it's still paper that's moving, right? So I would say there is no one shoe fits all in the digitization space. You got to put a stake in the ground where it hurts most. If today your operational efficiency is low compared to your peers, look at how do you improve that. If today your entire need is about streamlining manufacturing with logistics and supply chain, look at how do you then have a data that flows from manufacturing to your own logistics operations and to your third-party providers to make sure that everything is in sync. Today, if your design organization is not in sync with your manufacturing, and there is a demand that for ESG requirements, et cetera, the design of that particular product needs to follow all of that. You need to have a data that flows across the enterprise to put a tick in the box there. So, again, as I mentioned, there is no silver bullet that can address everything. It has to be based on the need of the organization.
That brings to the question regarding the skills that are required. So what kind of tech skills required to work in this in the realm of digital manufacturing? Is the workforce ready for digital transformation now?
Well, I would think it's a mixed bag, right? So I think people on the shop floor in the past have been consumed with the fact that they are not IT people. So there was always this big divide between IT and non-IT people. And that's the reason you see paper floating around. That's the reason you see these whiteboards, right? And that is bridging right now, A, with the access to information, B, with the fact that a lot of these machineries are smart machineries. So this phobia that it used to exist that, I'm not an IT person. If there is a breakdown, I need to call an IT person. That is kind of a blurring. Is the workforce ready for it? I think the workforce is getting there. There is significant amount of ease of use of system that has happened, even at the OT level, for people to embrace it much better. Also, what has happened is people are getting slightly more savvy with, say, touch technologies or technologies in their hands, right? So everyone is a smartphone user. So the phobia of, well, I would disrupt something if I touch something is slightly getting eroded. So I think the skills are in place for looking at how a smart, say, AI-based platform can address the needs of an organization. There are training courses, there is exposure in the market. The vendors like ourselves, we invest heavily right at the university level and beyond how to bring up the skills as well. And then there'll always be a gap because technology keeps evolving. So it's incumbent on the organization or the enterprise to kind of shape up as a learning organization to make sure that people are abreast with the latest and greatest available.
Are you seeing a lot of organization in India set up an OT task force with an OT owner? What's your view to this ownership in their journey to factory digitization?
So in the APAC and Japan region that I serve, and I'll start with that, apart from Japan, for me, India is one of the hottest manufacturing markets, yeah? So due to all the geopolitical tensions and skill shortage globally, India's manufacturing relevance, both for domestic consumption as well as exports, has gone up tremendously. And we all know this, people on this call, right? In the past 18 months, as a topic of factory digitization, something that is constantly coming to the fore, the topic of OT is also gaining a lot of prominence. Most of the large manufacturing companies that are asset heavy, that are asset based, are also looking at, they have put in something like OT security as part of their BCP or the business continuity initiatives. Yeah. Since this is a separate domain, a lot of them have actually realized that they need to create a separate, OT leader with a special focus on security. And in some cases, the role reports into the CIO. And I have seen at least 5 companies where the reporting line is not to the CIO, but to the CFO. The ownership of the OT leader is something that is a very interesting topic. I've seen, let me share just 2 anecdotes here. In the first case, a steel manufacturer, the OT leader was part of a senior task force that, managed the program for the transformation. So think about it, right? The OT leader is at that highest level of that program management of their digital transformation. Here, the sense of ownership was extremely high, and the resource actually went all 9 yards. In another case, the OT individual was not part of the core transformation team and was pulled in on an as-needed basis. And I've seen that person just couldn't care less as to, what was going on, and was constantly aligning himself to the CIO rather than the business. So again, why am I mentioning all this? It's super important to understand that if you do not put the whole OT part of it as one of the key pieces of the jigsaw in your digital transformation of the shop floor, you might be missing a trick.
Which sub-industries are taking a lead when it comes to securing the OT assets?
Well, I think I did allude to this earlier during an earlier question. Well, logically, the topic of OT should resonate with any manufacturer. Yeah, we are seeing more traction with the automotive and heavy industries. There's a lot happening in these industries in the digitization space. This is obviously spurred by new customer demands, compliance and reporting, ESG, product as a service, move to cloud, all of that, right? Now, as they do that, they realize that more and more of the OT assets are exposed to external threats. Hence, we see a lot of traction there.
Could you take us through how to solve the issue of data sprawl across the various best-of-breed systems in any manufacturing environment to achieve true factory digitization?
I mean, I hope everyone understands what's data sprawl. I mean, having spent 30 odd years in this industry, I have seen that this industry thrives on best of breed. There will be someone who picks up the best possible application for design, say an AutoCAD or any other design software. Someone looks at a supply chain planning and optimization solution, the best of breed there. Someone looks at a procurement system. Someone looks at asset management, all of that. And all this, it creates a suboptimal, performance in the enterprise. If you take an end-to-end view, they might do a fantastic job within the spectrum of what they're supposed to do. But when it comes to looking at an end-to-end and balancing it based on those 2 key parameters of, say, cost and customer service, sometimes they miss the trick. So my recommendation is one connecting platform, which sort of plays the role of sort of an integration hub, bringing everything into a particular actionable database, and then using the power of workflows on top of that, which is enabled through, say, a learning algorithm, looking at, say, an AI-based algorithm to ensure that the 80-20 rule is applied, where 80% of what's needed to be done is mundane and it's managed by the system, and it's only 20% that gets flushed out so that the people do real quality work, right? That is something that I see as a hyper decision support system. And that is something that takes an end-to-end view of the enterprise throughout the entire value chain. Yeah. So that's my recommendation, that this is something that can manage the data sprawl, because the data of different applications will continue to grow, and these applications will continue to grow, to mushroom, right? And all of these separate applications will go through version changes and expansion and all of that. So if you have that layer of action on top of that, it kind of nullifies this effect of data sprawl across these separate applications.
Okay, Ash, I do not know how you will be able to take this on, because somebody has asked to share articles with real life case studies or examples on digital transformation done in diverse manufacturing industries for their reference. So you can either address them now, or maybe if you want to share the information via an email.
So I guess, this is something that we could do, that, as I mentioned, feel free to drop in an email to the ITP team, and we will be able to send you that material. There is a lot of material that exists on our website, which is public information, that does talk about digital transformation, that does talk about OT. And when you say diverse, it does also address diverse manufacturing environments. It could be automotive, chemicals, consumer goods, your heavy industries, pharmaceutical, life sciences, all of that, right? So take a look at what exists. And if you still can't find the stuff, feel free to drop in an email and we will be sending you the material.
Can you please summarize the strategies you mentioned in digital transformation of manufacturing?
So let me get the question right. The strategies in terms of implementing a successful digital transformation. I think this has been discussed in a few questions that have come up as well as part of this Q&A. You need to make sure that you understand your landscape properly. So I think two fundamental things. I did talk about baselining, right? I did give the weight example, the weight management example. You got to baseline what you currently have. You also need to understand from a business context where you want to get to. Once these two are in place, you can start looking at building your entire roadmap for digital transformation, from crawl to walk, walk to run, run to sprint, right? In that, you need to make sure that you map your data needs to your business needs. And only then an outcome will come out of that. And if that happens, only then the next step can be achieved. Think about it. If you go to your CFO today or the CEO today saying, I need $20 million to drive digital transformation on the factory shop floor, you know how long that meeting is going to last. But if you go and say, hey, you know what? I would like to improve my customer churn by X%, and that would give us this much revenue. That's where that person or the CFO or the CEO will sit up and say, okay, tell us more about it. And then you can talk about where you are and how do you get to the next level through managing your data and putting in an intelligent decision support system to manage that churn, right? So I think it's about mapping your entire needs and your current baselining of your systems. These are the two important things. But what's happening more and more is people get caught on with their day-to-day work, and they actually hire consultants or third-party resources to do this. And what it ends up being is a lot of paper that gets generated in terms of ideas and all that, but no one puts their neck on the block in order to get started. My advice is put a stake in the ground, find a use case that is going to move the needle for the business, be it from a cost basis or from a customer service basis. So cost or revenue, right? If you can find a use case, put a stake in the ground, and work your data needs around that, you will learn a lot. And that would lead to an overall end-to-end transformation in the organization.
Thank you, Ash. Thank you, ServiceNow, for for partnering with Manufacturing Today for this wonderful webinar on digital transformation, which is the future for manufacturing industry.